Mr. Amal De Silva Vijayratna leads Rockland Distilleries Private Limited, which is a trailblazing venture that introduced high-quality spirits production to Sri Lanka for the first time in its history. Over the span of a century, Rockland Group has maintained its status as a privately owned family business while emerging as one of the nation's most advanced distilleries and achieving success in international markets. Amal also spearheaded the launch of Olu Water, Sri Lanka's premier natural mineral water brand, the glass bottles that we were having yesterday, and Pelican Island, a popular mixer brand. Shalin Balasuriya is the visionary co-founder of Spa Ceylon, a luxury Ayurveda brand renowned for its exquisite products and spa experiences. He has spearheaded Spa Ceylon's journey to become a global ambassador of authentic Ayurvedic traditions, and under his leadership, the company continues to redefine luxury skincare and wellness, showcasing the island's natural treasures to the world. Asanka will now probe them on how they reimagine these major industries into success.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all of you, bearing with. I know we have been cramming your heads with all these stories. This part of the, I wanted to show some of the great work that's been done. I mean, most of you are thinking about Sri Lanka, about beaches and spices and all of that, but there's big companies being made here, and wanted to share the success stories that we have. So let's start with Amal. Amal, you run a company that's 100 years old, and then you are essentially, able to turn it around or rebrand and make it a much larger impact. What's the story there?
I might have to tell you a story to tell you that story. Yes. As a child, one of my favorite stories was the story of King Arthur and his knights and the round table. The importance about that story, it is about, even at that time, about the culture, that everybody was equally respected, and that they were so deeply passionate about their king and their country. So when I came to Rockland, one of my biggest dreams was to work in a place which I loved, to come every day, and to have a great bunch of absolutely passionate people working for me. I remember I'd lived and worked in the UK and just come back, and after the tsunami, I walked into the office February 9th, I think it was, and I turned up and I couldn't see anybody. I thought, hang on, did I get the date wrong? Where have the people gone? Well, it turned out the receptionist had taken the morning off, so it was not occupied. And it was full of partitions. I mean, these are solid roof-to-ceiling partitions with only the front door maybe frosted, and then you couldn't see what was going on. And everybody worked in silos and didn't speak to each other. And there were two women there, the secretary, the sales secretary, and the receptionist. That's it. Currently, Rockland has 30% of its working force are women, and 40% of its leadership team are women too, and the women control 80% of the power. Now, so my vision was to build this team, but there's such a lot behind this thing. How do you build a team if they're all separated by partitions? So the first steps of cultural transformation is where we started. We built a whole new fourth floor, had a radical open office system, started hiring people. We collected people. If somebody walked in and they were deeply passionate, we'd rather pick them over their qualifications. And so we started collecting people and doing this. And then a few years back, again, a radical transformation to have a whole open culture of working. And of course, putting all the infrastructure from IT to processors to looking at Unilever and saying, hey, how do they take their orders, and try and emulating them and learning from them. So it's been a very interesting journey, and in our boardroom now is a round table. And I think we have some wonderful people working with us at Rockland.
Thank you. I think one of the things we've heard over the last few days through these sessions is that to address some of these pressing issues. The premise of this conversation is Asia Pacific is 4.5 billion people living, getting richer and living longer. But we also have many challenges to address. And as we are looking at the challenges, the critical aspect is how do you get the culture of the institutions to get these things going. So Charlene, can you add on to, you built a beautiful brand at SPA Ceylon. How you are addressing this? How did you have to, when you launched a different business that was there and you relaunched it. What was that transition?
Well, for us it was interesting. For those of you who have seen the brand, SPA Ceylon is, as we define it, a luxury Ayurveda brand. And when we set out to do a luxury Ayurveda brand, and the whole thinking was we'll build it here and take it out to the world, a lot of people thought we were mad. A lot of Sri Lankans said, no one is going to pay you a premium for Ayurveda, because even in Sri Lanka, although we had such a rich heritage in Ayurveda, it was always thought of, or it had got to be thought of as alternate medicine, it was thought of as a poor man's medicine, it was smelly, it was icky, the association was old doctors and mud huts and so on, and no one thought that this could be a luxury offering. But looking to the world, we realized that two things: people wanted luxury across every step of their consumption. The other is the world was going green. And authentically green is what you had to be if you wanted to make it in the long term. And that's what Ayurveda was, or is. It's a very authentic science, deep-rooted in our culture, like it is in India. And it has so much knowledge. I was having a conversation with one of the doctors last morning, one who was here for this event, about Ayurveda and how today, what Ayurveda has been teaching us for thousands of years, Western medicine is telling us now. If you look at age hacks and anti-aging and all that, they're talking about turmeric, they're talking about ginger, they're talking about ashwagandha. These things are used in our cultures for thousands of years. If you look at what they're saying for good living and wellness, about how you consume your food, how you manage what you eat, all that has been in our culture for thousands of years. And yes, there are different waves of influence that came and then overshadowed it. But what lies, especially in rich Asian cultures, is a lot of knowledge passed down through generations. If we can only take that and take it out in the world in a meaningful way to today's modern consumer, there is a lot to be had. This is the conversation I have with a lot of young Sri Lankan entrepreneurs. Because Sri Lanka as a country is relatively undiscovered to the world. For 30 years, we were in a civil war. People didn't hear much of us. Even since then, not a lot of great stories, other than a tourism story that's really proven to be popular. But Sri Lanka has many layers of amazing things to give the world. And in a world where we are all, as brands, fighting for attention, looking for the next big thing, looking for something unique and different, Sri Lanka has a lot to give. And that is what's made our brand so successful. We are in 27 countries, over 139 locations now. The reason we've managed to be successful has to do everything with this beautiful island we are on. And all the elements of the brand we built come from here. And the fact that we are undiscovered is an amazing gift to us Sri Lankans and whoever invests in Sri Lanka to take things from Sri Lanka out to the world, because there's so much potential.
Thank you. I wanted to shift a little bit about essentially mastering you, right? Because one of the challenges as you're leading your organizations, how do you deal with essentially your skills, developing knowledge continuously, or habits, books, things that influence you, and how do you control through rough times and as well as good times?
2 or 3 questions in that question.
That's how I like to say it.
When I was a little boy, I wasn't really that good at anything. I got 3 for chemistry at A-level times, just before. And then I worked really hard. That's actually 3 out of 100, actually. And my chemistry teacher said, Amal, dramatic 100% improvement. You got 7 this time. You know, so there was never any, because I wasn't really good at anything, I had to really work hard. My father saw me working, struggling, and he said, you know what, Amal? If you put your absolute heart into it, do your best, it really doesn't matter what happens after that. And coming into this, I knew I was going to get asked lots of strange questions. And so I was thinking, who am I really and what has been my journey? And I realized the words success and failure don't actually exist for me. It is just do whatever you're doing in the best way possible with the best, deepest passion and hard work. Because if you don't know what success is, you keep working harder to make it better. If you don't know what failure is, you're never scared to try something new. And that's been the spirit of, I think, how I've run Rockland and how we work at Rockland too. Strange things I do. So, I mean, when I came to Sri Lanka, I had to find a place to stay. So rather than buying a piece of land somewhere and knowing that it'll grow, I found a little apartment so close to office. It's like a 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, a 3-minute drive. Because my thinking was, hey, if I save 1 hour going back and forth every day, that's 5 hours, 5 out of an 8-hour day. That makes me 12.5% more efficient than any other CEO. That'll give me a competitive advantage. You know, so that's the level of thinking we went into.
You said you were not good in chemistry, but you must have been very good in math.
Actually, that is true.
So, actually, one of the things that I would love to ask is, from a Western company's point of view, market access is not a huge challenge because the agreements that they have, open market practices within, especially getting into the Western markets. Both of you have companies that have gone outside of Sri Lanka. Can you speak a little bit about creating market access? What are the barriers? How you approach this? How you even talk to your board about this? How you plan it? How long does that take? I know this is like 15 questions in one, but try to take a crack at it, Charlene.
Look, market access, when you're looking at, we play in the cosmetic side of things. There are a bunch of non-tariff barriers for market access, which goes through approvals, about responsible parties. I think there might be people in similar industries. And all those things are tedious, but you can get over. One of the biggest problems we have is when you say you're a cosmetic brand from South Asia or Sri Lanka, what that narrative means to people. People are very happy to buy a cosmetic brand, a perfumery brand from France, from the UK, but when you say you are this little island in the middle of nowhere, then people start thinking, oh, do they have the capacity to? I've gone to industry shows and people have asked me about riding elephants to school. So that's how little the world, even in such a connected time, know about this little island of ours. And so there are some biases that come with it, but what we did is we flipped it. So we told an exotic story about this amazing tropical island called Ceylon, which you may not know where it is on the map, but it is tropical, it's lush, it's beautiful, and that story resonated. And that became better than people being able to point us out on a map because all the great things they know that come from this island were called Ceylon. Ceylon gemstones, Ceylon spices, Ceylon tea, and maybe Ceylon arak. So I mean, there are all these barriers, the non-tariff barriers and the tariff barriers, you have to deal with it. And of course, coming from this part of the world, getting into places like Europe, they'll always try to keep you out. Getting into China is very, very hard. They protect their own brands. But I think if we can work on the perception side of things, that's a good key for South Asian brands to get in there and really push on the exotic side, really push on the historic knowledge side, because people are buying into these stories now because those stories are authentic and you can go back and research it. So we have a really good advantage being South Asian brands to go with the rich culture and heritage we have.
Amal, actually, I wanted to see, because you particularly work in an area in spirits. So how, which is Diego, and I think some large companies have a pretty strong hold on the market. How do you approach the market access?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question. So one of the first things we did was we realized that, just like Charlie was saying, they look at Sri Lanka and say, in our case, they might look at Iraq and say, oh my God, I might get a headache when I drink this. Is it good for me? Is it safely distilled? So one of the things we did was we decided to bottle in Europe. Because if we passed all the European or British standards in our case, which are absolutely tough, then they are guaranteed that this product is good and safe and fine to drink. And that was one of the most important things and decisions we made. And then along with that, when you meet those people, you also get introduced to distribution networks, how people do things, how other bands are performing. So you get a whole lot of other things when you step into manufacturing overseas, I think.
I want to see, you both have started working and going out. What do you see about your expansions? Like expansion, like what do you see the next 5-10 years?
For Auckland?
For manufacturing.
Okay. I think when even Charlene said, this country has so many beautiful things. You know, it's not just, for Auckland, it wasn't just spirits, it's Olu water, Sri Lanka's first natural mineral water sourced from the cloud forest. It's beautiful. And then we got our new brand, Pelican Island, made with natural ingredients from Sri Lanka. The cola has cinnamon in it and so on. So we can manufacture a whole lot of things on this island and take it to the world because they want something that's exotic and different. If you try to make the same thing that's out there, I don't think it'll succeed because it's not different and not special enough. And so I think there's a lot of hope for manufacturing in Sri Lanka should people find what they want to put their heart and passion into. I was actually thinking, take Chinese rolls and deviled eggs, right? You know the deviled eggs? It always bothers me. How do you start from the side or the top? Best decision is to pop it in your mouth, right? Imagine in Marks and Spencer, we had Sri Lankan deviled eggs and Chinese rolls. How curious and fantastic that would be, right? But it's a Sri Lankan thing. So maybe somebody might make it and take it to the world, who knows?
Absolutely. So one of the things is, I wanted to ask, like this panel, just as you look at, we have a lot of entrepreneurial spirit popping over here. How do you see an inflection point in that? Meaning, like, are we gathering enough momentum for Sri Lankan own development, the speed, how, these ecosystems? We had a conversation yesterday about how tech ecosystems are developing here. You both have been building companies for quite a bit time here. How do you see that? Are we hitting some kind of a strides? Are we hitting an inflection point in entrepreneurship here?
I also chair the Startup Council for Sri Lanka. And when you look at entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka, it's just buzzing. There are lots of young entrepreneurs out there, particularly in tech, but they're also taking it to other areas. So entrepreneurship, if you look at entrepreneurship as a whole, Sri Lankans have an entrepreneurial mindset. Sri Lankans are also very good at navigating problems. It's just built into us, probably because we're always looking for an easy way to do something. But we're really good at that, and I think that's why we have some of the best graduates out of Moroto University as well from the engineering and tech side. That being said, Sri Lanka as a market is very, very unique. Particularly, yes, manufacturing, there are certain manufacturing cost situations, yes, but Sri Lanka, the placement's really good for shipping. Sri Lanka is a quite interesting size as well. We are big enough to test a product, but we are small enough to incubate it, which is what we did with our brands as well before we took it out to the world. So it's very interesting in that sense because it's very representative of a lot of Asian countries, but it's small enough to control. Then we get the fact that there is a good amount of technology, there's a good amount of budding graduates coming out. Apart from that, the connectivity is reasonably good. We have some decent FTAs in place. We are absolutely the gateway to India because we have an India FTA, we have FTA with Pakistan, Taiwan's coming up, Singapore's coming up. So given that, we're going to be quite an interesting place to do business. And on top of that, we're a great place to live. So you work here, the beach is just around the corner. The mountains are 2.5 hours away. Kite surfing is another 2.5 hours away. Surfing is just close by. So if you judge quality of life the way I judge quality of life, it's an amazing place to live.
Plus you have Rockland.
And Spa Salon.
So with that, let me thank you both, but let me open for questions from the audience. Okay, you guys are still waking up, I see, from lunch. Very good. So I want to thank you, both of you, for thing. Any last thoughts for, we have a number of people watching this from online, young people dreaming about building companies like the companies you are building. Any advice? Parting thoughts?
I mean, what stops us is your dreams or lack of them. There's absolute proof that you can build beautiful brands, Spa Ceylon, the work we've done with Ceylon Colombo Gin, Dilma Tea, beautiful brands, they can be built here if you dare to dream. So go ahead.
My final words of everyone in the room and everyone connected to everyone in the room. Sri Lanka is a great place to live and work, great place to launch brands, start brands, a great place to leverage things for brands. Think about Sri Lanka before everyone in the business world really gets heavy on it and get on the ground floor. It's a really great place to launch brands from.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please give them a round of applause. And we have some gifts for them. Sir, I would love for you to come and hand over these gifts. Yes.